Hello, you wonderful and beautiful ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Break at the Apex podcast. And you might be wondering, where's the wonderful third person of the podcast? He is unfortunately not very well. Get well soon, BT. But Graham, let me know, how are things going with you? We've got not a lot, but very interesting topics to get into after this Austrian Grand Prix.
Yeah, first of all, we're going to miss BT here because I think he has the chance, or he's going to miss the chance to really get at me, being that I am a Red Bull and a McLaren fan. So, but the good news is that Danny Ricciardo did well. I'm a Danny Ricciardo fan too, so the silver linings. There's a silver lining here. Anyways, I'm all good. I'm happy to get here. I'm happy to get into the show. Sorry for fumbling my words. It's pretty late. It took us a while to get started from some tech issues, so I'm a little bit annoyed, but I'm going to liven up. I'm going to get the vibe going, or Dirk's going to get the vibe going, and I will definitely mirror it. So let's get into it. I'm good. I'm ready. I'm happy. Spicy race, if I'm honest. It was actually really a boring race up until Lando was like, hey, bro, let's do this. And then all of a sudden, it all kicked off. So, yeah, let's get into it.
Okay, well, considering you mentioned that, let's address the elephant in the room, because it's everything anybody who's an F1 fan is talking about.
Did you say the elephant in the room?
Yes.
Oh, BT's not here though. Oh, sorry.
Oh, even if he's not here, he's gonna get slandered. In any case, let's get straight into it.
I love you, BT. So, if you're watching, I love you, dude. Honestly, you're the best guy.
You know he's gonna be watching.
But he also knows
he's gonna.
Yeah, but he also knows. He also knows I love him. Like, it's just one of those things.
Okay, but actually, I think we're going to have a nice conversation about this, especially from your side, because it's literally your two favorite drivers in both the teams, in both your favorite teams. Oh my word! Good luck to you. But let's just ask the question, and then the conversation will carry itself. Your opinion, Max or Lando's fault?
To put it bluntly, Max. To put it bluntly, it was Max's fault. I think, if I've got to elaborate a little bit more, I don't think that Max deserves the lashing that he's getting. I think it's a bit unwarranted. It really wasn't that bad. It wasn't that big a deal. He moved to the left slightly. They clipped each other's tires, and it ended in punches. In other races, they would have hit tires, bounced each other, and they would have carried on racing. It just happened that they punctured their tires, and it just ruined their races. But it could have gone anyway. And it just happened to be the unfortunate way that it ended in. But ultimately, it was such a minute thing, and Max is just getting a little bit way too much hate for it. And I'm not happy about it, because as much as I can agree it was definitely his fault, I think the people that are more to blame here are the stewards, because they should have stopped it earlier already. For example, the big question is Max moving under the brakes. Lando brought it up a couple times. The reason why they couldn't give Max a penalty for it is simple. They let Ocon do it to Alonso. So they can't let Ocon do that to Alonso and then say, oh, Max, you're not allowed to do it. So they shot themselves in the foot, and they allowed this to happen, and it's their own fault. It's not Max's fault. And one of the messages that I've been debating this on TikTok all day, and to you guys that are watching on the podcast here, one of the messages I'm just trying to get out is stop throwing hate at Max. The reality is he is a driver that has championship mentality. What does that mean? Championship mentality is guys like Schumacher, Senna, Alonso, Lewis, guys that will do everything and anything that it takes to win. It's guys that will push it to the limit and sometimes go over the limit, knowing that sometimes they will get away with it. All of those guys do it. Max is doing it. It doesn't make it right, but at the same time, if you're a racer and you get away with something, of course you're going to do it again, because it's going to help you gain the advantage. They do it all the time. We've been seeing it for decades. We've seen Max push the limit for many years, and people hate it, but I love it because it's hard racing, and I think it's real racing. And somebody commented on the TikTok today saying this is racing. If you cry about it, then we might as well just start pushing prams around a parking lot, which I thought was hilarious.
That's very true, actually. And I want to elaborate on your point from my perspective. So, obviously, for those of you guys that view the podcast that don't know, I've got my own YouTube channel as well where I do sim racing content. So, it's virtual, but for guys like us that never got the opportunity to race in real life, it's very real. And if I just take myself, whether it's in a league racing situation that's like a championship on a game, or whether you just race a bunch of random guys online, or even the AI in the game, when you're in a winning position, you do everything you can to defend. And I mean, the proof is literally in my YouTube videos. Sometimes I'm a bit of a harsh defender. And I agree with you to the fact that people are being too harsh on Max, but in the same sense, it is his own fault. I mean, ever since Max started, he's always been the guy that people have. I wouldn't say, oh, they're scared to race him, but they're very tentative to race him because they know Max is a very aggressive defender and attacker. And this is coming from somebody who's not a Max fan. Again, I will reiterate it every podcast. I've got the world's respect for Max Verstappen. I just don't like the guy, but that doesn't mean the hate that's coming his way is deserved. It was the same with Hamilton back at Silverstone 2021. Everybody was up in arms that Hamilton could have killed Max. It is what it is. This is racing.
Yeah.
These guys know every time they sit down in the cockpit of that F1 car, their lives are on the line. But they do it because they love it and because they've got a passion for it. And even though this was not nearly as bad, Lando isn't completely innocent. He went for some outrageous dive bombs a few laps in succession. And I do think he caught Max a bit napping at certain stage. I don't think Max expected Lando to be as aggressive as he was. And for me, it's a situation of let bygones be bygones, because the one thing that everybody's asking and is actually irritating me so much is, will their friendship survive? With all due respect, who cares about their friendship?
It's a world championship.
I know how it sounds. It's a world championship at stake. It's something that these two drivers, and again, with all due respect, they're my age. They're still kids. People can tell me what one. At 24, you are still a kid if you are working at that echelon of any sport, whether it's rugby, soccer, Formula One. If you are that young in the sport, you're still classified as a kid. Okay. But they've been dreaming about this moment since they've been, a quarter of the size they are now. And just to get back to my point, because I'm starting to do a Graham level ramble here, the hate towards Max is definitely unwarranted. And I really feel it's not needed. It happened. And yes, Max is, even though Max will never accept responsibility because that's just how he was raised, hashtag Jos Verstappen. But Max was the clear guy at fault. The rule book says you don't move under braking, and Max did. But I agree with you that this is the steward's fault, because they should have hammered Ocon. I mean, they hammered Alonso going for a dive bomb, and he connected with Zhou. But when it came to the defensive driving, the stewards were really not on it this weekend. And Max still got a penalty. He still got a reprimand. So it is what it is. But
I think,
remember what I said like 5 races into the season when we saw that Red Bull weren't so far ahead as everybody thought after Bahrain. We're in for a cracker of a season that remains.
100%.
It's going to be awesome.
100%, and I'm very excited for what's to come, because I feel like this is just the beginning. To be honest, I feel like this is just the beginning. And remember, we've still got 1 year left of the current regulations, so I feel like it. I feel like it. We could have more than 1 year of this, and I'm super excited for it. My only concern, I mean, we can go on about this forever, guys. Like there's so many ways to debate this entire situation, right? I've seen it all. I've been looking at TikTok comments on my videos, comments on other people's videos, and I've seen it all. And I just think that what people tend to forget is that, again, that the reality is this is racing. It's not.
Yes.
And I think people don't understand, like, when people in the paddock, and when I say people in the paddock, you got to put some credibility to their name, because they're there for a reason. I'm talking about people like David Coulthard, Eddie Jordan, people like Damon Hill, people like Jensen Button, current drivers, friends of current drivers. When these people say the word Max belongs in the GOAT category, there's a reason for it.
Yes.
And the reason why I'm saying that, guys, is because the one thing I can't understand is people tend to forget that there's a reason why Max is where he is. There's a reason why Max is that GOAT category driver. Nobody's saying he's a GOAT, but he's definitely in the conversation. Because the reality is he's willing to do what a lot of people aren't willing to do, and that helps you win. And I think what I really struggle to understand is how people can't comprehend that this is what championship drivers do. All of them. Dude, like, you can go back many years. The only times you don't see drivers doing these type of things are the one-hit wonders. The guys that got a brawn and then decided to... No disrespect. Jensen, no, like, you know, Jensen's one of my favorite drivers.
No, not everybody is excluded. I mean, just think of Nico Rosberg.
Yeah, well, to be fair, he had to fight tooth and nail for that. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, listen, he put up a fight. Like, not gonna lie. But the point is like, most champions had to go through this kind of thing where they, you know, even Lewis had a lot of hate when he was young because he was super aggressive and people complained. But this is racing, guys. And you know what it is? I'm a very competitive person, and I also did league racing. I've done a couple karting races, which was more of a friendly thing, not competitive. But because I'm such a competitive person, you know, along with my mates also being competitive, you go karting every now and again. It becomes like your own little championship between you and your mates. And trust me, you do the same things because you really want to win. You really want to be the best, you know. And it's just one of those things that people need to understand. Until you are a racer, or until you put yourself in a really competitive situation, I don't think you'll ever really understand why Max does it. But you can't hate him for it. Like, he's doing what all of them would do, and I just think people need to really understand that. The other thing that I've got to say, and I don't want to ramble on too much because obviously we've got other topics to cover here, but the other thing I'd like to bring up as well is the fact that Lando also has so much to learn. For example, go speak to Charles Leclerc. You're never going to outrace Max Verstappen. It's just not going to happen. If you want to beat Max Verstappen, you've got to get clever. You're never going to outrace Max Verstappen. People can say what they want. I'm not saying this as a fanboy. I'm not saying this as a Max lover or whatever. I'm not. I'm just a supporter. If I love somebody, it's probably Daniel Ricciardo. We know this on this podcast. I think most people know this on this podcast. But ultimately, Max is in that GOAT category for a reason. People fear him for a reason. He is the current Schumacher Senna of the day because he gets into your head, and he does that for a reason. To win championships. And at the end of the day, Lando, I know you're watching. If you want to beat Max, don't try and play Max's game. Don't try and outrace Max Verstappen. You're not going to get it right. You need to get clever. Charles Leclerc in 2022 got clever. And until Max caught on to what he was doing, he was making it work. Lando needs to do that. He needs to take a leaf out of Charles' book and try and get clever. I'm just going to leave it at that. And I mean, if you wish to ask me more questions about it, I'd be happy to answer. But we're also okay to move on. I think we've covered a lot there, but it's up to you really. But I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, I just want to mention something quickly, and I'm glad that you talked about it because this is something that, especially, I've got a lot of my friends have recently or only just now gotten into F1. And obviously, you see a first amazing race like this, and you tend to choose sides because you don't really understand what's going on yet. But the thing for me is that I always try to explain to them, and it's something that, again, that I'm so glad you mentioned. Me, as someone who really doesn't like Max Verstappen, has to give the guy his roses. And I mean, if you look at drivers like Senna, Schumacher, and I'm specifically mentioning those two because the one is no longer with us and the other one is unfortunately not very healthy. And out of respect for them, I'm not going to make a joke about it because I really feel that's very disrespectful.
Yeah, for sure.
But they were known as hyper aggressive drivers that made the other drivers nervous when battling. And look at it now. Senna has got a monument at Imola. And every time you talk about the greatest of all time, the one to beat is
His name
Senna
comes
and
up.
Schumacher.
Exactly.
Yes. And it's because they were these, I wouldn't say hyper aggressive, but because they were calculated aggressive drivers. They both did sketchy stuff in their
Oh,
careers. Senna and
jeez.
Prost took each off 2 championships in a row. Schumacher rolled Damon Hill in Australia, took out a bunch of other drivers just to make sure that they won. And people are going to throw stuff in like, but then that questions your talent and all these things. No, it doesn't. They wouldn't have been in that position to make those moves if they weren't good drivers to get themselves into a championship position. And even though I'm someone that really I'm a big a big supporter of good clean racing, sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, I agree.
And people think Max is just going to let Lando go because he's got such a big championship advantage. No.
It doesn't work that way.
Max wants to extend or at least keep that for as long as he can because Max is not stupid. Max knows that McLaren currently is the car to beat.
100%.
And if he sleeps for just 1-2 races, there's a big championship battle. And then he's under unnecessary pressure. So he's going to defend as if it's the championship winning race every weekend. But again, let's leave it at that.
Sorry, before we move on, can I just based on some things that you said there, I just want to mention two things. And I might have forgotten the one thing already, but maybe it'll come back to me. But the one thing the one thing that I wanted to mention is that, oh my goodness, I think I forgot both of them now. Jeez.
The excitement overwhelms the ideas.
ADHD
Here
at
we
its
go.
best. No. Okay, so the one thing that I wanted to mention is simply that when you think about these GOAT drivers and drivers that need to do what they need to do and so on, you also need to understand that in reality, there is no way to win without doing what you need to do. If you're just going to let people go, then what's the point of you being there? I think the one thing that we need to understand as well, and I think again this is an FIA stuff up here, is that from our understanding, the team was not told that Lando actually had a 5-second penalty. And had the team been told that, it could have been slightly different. Because Max could have maybe held him a little bit longer, just maybe until there were 5 or 6 or 7 laps left. And then he could have let Lando go, knowing that Lando wouldn't have been able to pull a 5-second gap in that short space of time. But according from our knowledge and from our understanding, the team didn't actually know. They weren't told. So again, I feel like this is a problem that could have been avoided had the stewards actually done their job. Which, don't get me wrong, I know some people will say, but it probably wouldn't have made a difference because Max is just not that type of person. But I just feel like at this point in his career, I think he'd be a bit more calculated had the chance come up. If GP says to him, Max, there's no ways he's pulling away from you in 5 laps, just let him go. I don't see him just saying, no, GP, I want to fight. Like, I just don't see it. It doesn't make sense. By the way, I did actually forget the first point I wanted to make, but it's fine.
You know what? Actually, I'm not going to talk about the fact that the FIA stuffed up. I think you covered that pretty clearly. Another thing that actually came to mind now when you mentioned that to me as well, and it was actually I saw it on motorsport.com. For you guys that want to go read the full interviews and everything. The questions were posed to both drivers after the race, and according to Max, he said that if he and the team did know, and he did decide to let Lando go, he thinks he could have kept the 5-second gap, well, under 5-second gap, to which Lando responded in the following interview with he wishes. So Lando, one thing that I do like about this, I almost want to say new Lando Norris, now that he realizes, a championship is a possibility, he's doing exactly what Max did when Max was racing Lewis in 2021. Everybody loved Max being this happy-go-lucky fun guy that's just stupid fast. And now that there's a championship on the line, Lando realizes I can't be that happy-go-lucky car Lando bromance with Max. He's my rival now, and I love that about him.
100%. But
In an alternative universe, which we will not receive, unfortunately, I would just have been curious to see if Lando actually could have pulled 5 seconds.
yeah,
Because no matter how you look at it, Max was struggling.
yeah, for sure.
He wasn't very comfortable on the tires that he was on, and the McLaren was flying on those fresh mediums. I would just have been curious to see, but unfortunately, we're going to have to wait till the next race at Silverstone, which I can't wait for.
Yeah.
But in any case,
I agree, but I will say that I feel like Lando was slightly immature in his interview in terms of, you know, like losing respect or whatever. Like we're not children, you know. This is racing, and you can't lose respect for a driver pushing himself to the limit. That's what drivers do to win, and I just think it was a little bit immature. I think Max was a little bit more mature, and again, it's not that I'm defending him. He was at fault. He got the penalty and the reprimand for it. I'm not defending it. It was his fault. But his maturity levels were just different, because he didn't go into the interview kicking off, you know, like the old Max would have done. He was calculated. He went in the interview. They asked him about, you know, Max saying, about Lando saying he might have lost a bit of respect. And instead of kicking off about it and saying, well, you know, I didn't do anything wrong, it was his fault, whatever, Max just said, well, you know, I guess I understand, but, you know, maybe we maybe just need to go and look at it and see what happened, because, you know, to me, you know, we don't break until the 70-meter board. So to me, it might seem confusing, but to him, it seemed okay. So, and also he was just trying to take the racing line technically, but it's his fault because he didn't see that Lando was there. If he did see that Lando was there, then arguably he took Lando out on purpose, but I don't think that he did that. I think he was just covering himself. And we got to also remember, Lando did the same thing to Piastri in the sprint race, where Piastri came on the outside.
That's true.
Lando also, in the last race, pushed Max onto the grass at the start. So it's not like Lando is the most innocent when it comes to giving space. Do you know what I mean? So ultimately, I just think that the maturity level between the drivers was a little bit contrast. And it's a bit disappointing, because I love Lando as well. Like, obviously, like we spoke about this at the beginning of the episode. I love Lando, support McLaren as well. But ultimately, I want to see a little bit more respect. I want to see a little bit less whining and a little bit more sort of like, let's just see what happened. You know, if Max was at fault, the team was gonna tell him that's the reality. It might be it's like a marriage. You know, being a racer to a team, it's like a marriage. The team will tell you behind doors. You're not going to fight in public. You're not going to tell Max it was your fault in public. But behind closed doors, you're going to tell Max, don't be stupid. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, they're all fighting for the same thing, a championship. And if Max is going to be stupid, they're going to tell him, listen, you're being stupid. So ultimately, I think they'll be fine. I think they'll talk about it. They'll move on. They'll be okay.
Yeah.
And not that I care about them being okay. I mean, I do care in a way, but only for the storyline of it, you know. But in terms of the championship, I don't really care too much. But I feel like everything will be fine, and come next race, they'll probably both laugh about it. I think personally, Max, with the DRS help, could have possibly kept Lando within that 5 seconds, but I still think there was maybe a little bit too many laps to go. And that McLaren was next level quick. But anyways, let's move on.
Okay, so guys, to end off this topic, at least the Red Bull PR program is better than their young drivers program. Let's move on to the next topic. And actually, I'm actually going to stick with Red Bull, because this is something that not a lot of podcasts are actually talking in detail about, because everybody's just over the topic, but I feel it can't be ignored. How on God's green earth did Max drive 2/3 of a lap on 3 wheels, get a penalty after a slow pit stop, and Perez still finished more than 10 seconds behind him? 2-year contract extension, my freaking untanned hiney.
Oh, man, it's such a difficult conversation to have, because it just seems like it's every weekend now. And we are one of the podcasts that have definitely been bringing him up every single weekend, and it really upsets me because I really like him, and I really think, like, to be honest, like, think about him in Force India was like a dream. Like, he pulled off the most amazing things, and you could actually say, like, back then you could actually say, like, if Perez got a good car, he'd be a handful. Well, he's got a good car, and he's not at all being a handful, and I think he's just not in the best form of his career, and honestly, it's really sad. But man, it's so difficult to talk about this because, quite honestly, it's like, to be honest, it's almost as difficult as me talking about Ricciardo having bad performances, and the reason why is it is because the reason why is because at least with Ricciardo you can say, like, it's been a couple years now that he's been struggling. With Perez, it's like he started last year on a high, and then he just went doop, and then this year he came back with a bang, and then it just went doop, and it's just kind of like why? Like, just keep your head in the game, but I guess again we don't know what's going on in the background, and I think we also need to realize as well that the question I asked last week, I'll say again, we also don't know how good the Red Bull really is. We know how good Max is, and it is a very big possibility that Max is just eking out more in that car than anybody can, and that is such a possibility considering Max knows that car better than anybody. And the reality is that gap is closed now. So when you think about the last couple years when Max was first and winning by 20 seconds and Perez was 20 seconds behind him in second, you give Perez a bit of stick for that, but he was still second, and so you still think, oh, okay, it's fine. But now that gap is closed, and now that 20 seconds is now, there's other cars in between those 20 seconds, that puts Perez from second to 8th or 9th, and so I think it's a tough one because ultimately the gap between Max and Perez is probably not any different than it was last year, to be honest. It probably isn't. It's just that the other cars have caught up now. So I guess maybe it's slightly unwarranted, maybe a little bit harsh because it's not really any different. But it still begs the question, why has he got an extension when he's not keeping up? Red Bull genuinely can lose this championship title if it carries on.
No, the threat is now here. I mean, Lando and Max came together. Who was the guys picking up the podiums? A Ferrari, a McLaren, and a Mercedes, not a Red Bull.
Yep.
And the thing for me is, Graham, look, also, I've actually got a massive soft spot for Perez because of his Force India / Racing Point, who are now Aston Martin days. Perez had those consistent performances where he would just show up out of nowhere and it's a podium or at least a P6.
Yeah.
And he's challenging Mercs and the Ferraris out front in the beginning of the race, absolutely embarrassing his teammates most weekends. And I'm just like,
to be fair,
I'm thinking
Lance
about
Stroll's not exactly the best teammate. It's not. Okay.
He did it to Ocon. Ocon,
sorry.
and
Yeah,
Ocon was
fair.
not far behind.
That's fair. Damn it! You were supposed to just chuckle but okay, it's fine.
Nah, I'll leave the Lance Stroll banter for a podcast when he actually messes up and is not just in a crappy car, which Alonso proved as well. But the thing for me is, it baffles for me, it is not possible to process that Perez in the pink suit and this Perez can be that miles apart. And it became apparent to me again, and I'm giving him his flowers because he deserves it. Max is just that damn fast. I don't think Perez has lost an ounce of talent. I mean, again, yes, he lost out to a Haas, which I'm not going to get into, but it's still against Nico Hulkenberg. He's a credited driver, and they were battling incredibly. When Perez was still at Racing Point and Hulkenberg was in the Renault, those guys were side by side most races, and it was always a fearsome battle.
Yeah.
And I just, for me, I've said this so many times, but Hamilton, Verstappen, and Alonso are teammate killers. And Max is busy doing that to Perez's career, not just him as a driver. He's doing it to Perez's career.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't want to give Perez any slander because if you compare what the McLarens did on when the cars got lighter on fuel to Max, even the Mercs and the Ferraris at some stages were quicker. And you compare it to where Perez ended up, it might not even have been a bad race for Perez. It's just maybe the Red Bull wasn't suiting the track,
Well,
and Perez couldn't figure something out.
I mean, he did have a bit of damage from our understanding, like with his whole thing with Perez, with Piastri, I think, or Leclerc or something like that. But he apparently did have some kind of damage. But I can't see it being that severe damage like that. It would affect his race so badly. And I mean, I know that sounds like a stupid statement. I mean, it's Formula One. Like a little nick off of a side plate or whatever can make a massive difference. But ultimately, he still seemed to be able to control that car perfectly fine. I mean, he was still making overtakes. He was still trying to defend Hulkenberg. It's not like he was. It's not like he was completely struggling. You know, he was still doing okay. But at the same time, it's not just this race. You know what I mean? It's all the races before this. And even if he did have a bit of damage, it also begs the question, why? Why is he getting into these accidents so much? Why is he getting all this damage? I mean, remember last year he was second on the list for the most amount of money that he's cost the team. Obviously, Sargent was 1. He was 2. Anyways, the point is that, you know, it's you got to also think to yourself, why is he having these accidents? You know, because it's possible that he's just not suited for that car. We also got to remember he was in a top car before. Eh? He was a McLaren driver before, and he couldn't hack it then either. So maybe Perez is one of those really, really, really good midfield drivers that just know how to get the best out of a midfield car. But when it comes to racing up front, under pressure and so on, maybe it's just a different thing, because maybe the pressure is very different, you know. I don't know. I guess we can speculate all we want. I remember what my point was earlier, by the way.
Took you 20 minutes.
Yeah. But it's fine. The point was actually that I wanted to make was that I'm very saddened and hurt by the death threats that get sent to Max. It's so apparent. Like, you go on TikTok and it's every single video somebody's given some kind of death threat, like, comment, and it's just like, why? Like, I don't get it. Like, they're racing. They're racing. Like, do people not understand what racing is? Like, it happens. And there's one argument that I've got to make for any accident, right? If you send Max a death threat, and if you treat Max the way he's being treated on social media and so on, then you're just being a coward, right? Because here's the reality.
Yeah.
The reality is, if you send Max a death threat, you best be sending every driver death threats, because every driver in their career is at fault for causing a collision or an accident, or is at fault for doing something wrong at some point in their career. Every single driver makes those mistakes. Every single driver does want to push the limit, and it forces them sometimes to cause a collision, push somebody off. So if you're sending Max a death threat, send one to all the drivers. Keep it fair. Stop hating on Max, but then it's double standards everywhere else. It's okay. But the moment Max, and you know what? As a Max fan, I'll even back Lewis here, because they do it to Lewis as well. The moment Lewis makes a mistake,
they do.
The moment Lewis makes a mistake, then the haters from the other side come at Lewis. Stop it. They're racing. These things happen in racing. It's been happening for years. Like, again, you know, we don't want to make jokes about this, and we don't want to get too sentimental about it. But Jim Clark, Senna, they died racing. Hubert died racing. And let's just give these people Jules Bianchi died racing. Let's give these people a little bit of respect. These things happened. These guys died on things that happen in the racing. It's not like they died in vain. They didn't die for nothing. And I don't mean that in I hope that doesn't come out wrong. But what I'm trying to say is that when you go into the sport, you know what you're getting yourself into. When you go into the sport, you know that there are dangers. When you go into the sport, you know you will get into some accidents. And when you, as a fan, want to watch the sport, you best know you are going to see these things happen constantly from all drivers. Not just one, not just two, all of them.
Not just from all drivers, from all different types of motorsport, whether you watch F1, MotoGP, freaking World Endurance Championship, V8 supercars, that's racing. And sorry, if we get demonetized, I'm very sorry about this. But to all these people sending these drivers death threats, okay? They're already putting their lives on the line. I dare you to grow a pair and get in that car and push it as hard as they do. You won't even get to 180 before you shit yourself.
Exactly.
So if you want to send death threats, do what they do and see if you can cope for one lap.
Exactly.
I dare you.
Exactly. I just want to bring this back a little bit. And I know we're having a serious conversation, but I just found it a bit funny, demonetized. Like, guys, please subscribe because we're not really monetized as yet. Please subscribe, like, do those things, but okay. I don't want to look. The thing here is that, you know, we are a light-hearted podcast. We want to keep things positive. We don't want to be too negative, but at the same time, we've got to address these things. I think it's really important that we hold each other accountable as fans as well. You know, I'm not the perfect fan. I sometimes complain too, but I complain and then I'll think about it, and then, you know, after seeing some reason, I'll probably sit back and be like, oh, okay, I guess, you know, maybe it makes sense. You know, I had a good debate today. It was a good debate until they brought up conspiracies, and that's when I was like, you know what, I'm not interested, because if that's your mentality, you won't listen to reason, because it's easier to understand a conspiracy. See, the conspiracy to them is that a lot of people feel like it's okay when Max do things, but other people get penalized for it. Apparently Max never gets penalized, which I find hard to believe, because there was a stage where Max was sitting on 10 penalty points. There was a stage where Max was literally getting in trouble every race because of his maneuvers. They changed the rules of how you defend because of Max Verstappen. Like, that in itself is a punishment. So I don't.
I mean, just 5 years back, his nickname was Crash Stappen.
Exactly, and so my point of reason was trying to reason and explain how this doesn't make sense. And then all of a sudden, this conspiracy came out where this person says, but if the stewards or something basically about being on Verstappen's payroll or something like that. And at that point, I'm just like, okay, listen, I'm all for a good debate, but you can't debate with somebody that has no reason, guys.
Debate with idiots. Sorry, that's blunt, but that's just the truth.
Let's bring the positivity back to this podcast, and let's just say this. This is racing. Let's enjoy the racing. Stop the double standards. Okay? You said the racing was boring. You said that F1 must change because the racing is too boring. You now got a couple laps of really hard racing. Probably the best entertainment we've seen since 2021.
Facts.
And now you want to change the rules because Max is doing this and doing that. Like, don't you understand that you can't complain for everything? You either want entertainment or you don't. And with entertainment comes this type of racing. And you've just got to live with that. And if you can't live with that, go and watch, as my friend on TikTok likes to say, prams in a parking lot. Because that's probably the only way that you'll actually enjoy something without complaining, if you're gonna enjoy that. So, anyways, let's really get away from the Max talk now, because, like, honestly,
yes. And to be honest, I've only got two other topics that I'm gonna make. One topic that I still want to talk about, and that is the Netflix special of Drive to Survive of the Austrian Grand Prix, of Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hulkenberg and Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon's radio messages. That was pure damn gold this weekend.
Spicy.
Okay. For me, there's been a lot of just cold radio messages in the past 10 years in F1. But Pierre Gasly, Just saying
Ciao.
to Esteban Ocon after he made the move,
Ciao.
ciao. Me and my housemate Johnny, we literally burst out in laughter watching the race. I mean, come on. I absolutely adore Gasly,
Yeah.
but and Kevin Magnussen's, Nico
If
Hulkenberg's
that, yeah.
very, yeah. We're not going to say that
Yeah.
because I'm.
No, I enjoyed that.
I full Drive to Survive season of just the Haas and the Alpine radio messages from 2024.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm here for
But
that.
you know what happened. You know what it is. You know what it is. I reckon, because there was posts that were made about Hulkenberg and Magnussen that were sitting watching the footy together because it was Denmark versus Germany, and as far as I understand, Germany won. So I think that Magnussen was a little bit upset, and he was like, "Nah, we've been playing the team game all year, but it's my time to win now. You won last night. It's my time to win here today." And he's just like, "F that." But unfortunately, Hulkenberg had an absolute belter of a race.
Lost.
But it was absolutely hilarious. And Gasly's, you know what Gasly reminded of, and obviously I'm a fanboy, so I'm going to bring it up. But that bit of cockiness from Gasly, you don't often see him being cocky. I love him because he's just a cool character, but you don't often see him being cocky. But you know who it reminded me of? It reminded me of Daniel Ricciardo when he was still with Red Bull, and I think it was at Monza or Canada or somebody. He started 14th, and he made it. I think he was like now past 5th position, and the person ahead of him was Massa, and they said, "Okay, you've got Massa up ahead," and he's like, "Okay, go get it, girl, go get it," and he just started like just that, like that pure funny cockiness. I like that because it's not pure arrogance. It's just a bit of light-hearted fun. Just you know that there's something boiling inside, but
there is beef between Ocon and Gasly.
You know that there's
that way
there's something boiling inside there, but at the end of the day, it's just like it's just a bit of a banter. You know what I mean? I loved it. I thought it was great. Yeah, to be honest, before Lando and Max that came out of nowhere, I thought that the majority of this podcast was going to be talking about Gasly and Ocon because quite honestly, and Alonso, because quite honestly, that was about the only action that you really could talk about. I think what Ocon, geez, like even Alonso was just like, literally all he could say was, wow. Like, his vocabulary just disappeared. Like Ocon, genuinely, like, and you can't fault the guy because he got away with it. The stewards didn't mind him. If you fault him, you got to fault Max. You can't. If the stewards didn't call him out on it, it's fair play. So it's just kind of like you can't. I mean, you guys know, like I'm not a big Ocon fan at all, but I'm gonna back him.
None of us on this podcast are.
Exactly, but I'm gonna back him here, and I'm gonna say, dude, fair play. Like he did it, he got away with it. Fair play, bro. But like, jeez, he's like Alonso's just like, wow. Okay.
Yeah, because we forgot it. And actually, you know what? In that moment, if you could screenshot those 3 cars, both the drivers Ocon were battling are drivers that he has had beef with in the last 3 seasons. Jeez. And he just decided, I'm in any case on my way out. So what have I got to lose?
Yeah,
boom.
Sure. Yeah, no.
Oh man.
Mental case.
But
anyways.
Oh man. But I mean, up until Red Bull bottled Max's final pit stop, it was literally the Haas and Alpine team radio Austrian Grand Prix, and then we got all the drama in the last 18 to 20 laps. But I mean, and just last thing that we have to talk about, and it's not really a talking point, it's just a congratulations point from my side, is
don't say it.
George
Don't
Russell.
Say it. Don't say it. Don't.
No. Hear me out. We've been giving Russell a lot of banter on this channel, and I've seen so many things on social media. He didn't deserve to win. He did this. He did that. And this is where I disagree. Russell put himself in that position. Yes, he's captain last lap bottleneck. We know this.
Yeah.
He loves to bottle a last lap pressure moment. But I honestly, I just want to give Russell his flowers. He outperformed every other car in the top 4 teams besides Verstappen and Norris. And he put himself in the position to win if they came together, and lo and behold, they did. So
Can we?
even though he has a lot of work to do still, I will admit
Yeah.
that Russell really drove a phenomenal race, and for the way it went, I personally believe and feel that he deserved to win that. He kept his nose clean, and he wasn't that far behind them.
Yeah.
He was up until the last pit stop. Russell was never more than 8 seconds behind the leading battle.
Yeah.
It's only when they got, because Russell didn't have new tires, just like Max. I think the 2 McLarens were the only cars on the entire grid that had fresh mediums for their final stint.
Yeah.
And Russell was struggling back, but he made sure Piastri and Sainz stayed behind him.
Yeah.
And they were literally, I think Piastri was 2.5 seconds and Sainz was 4 seconds behind Piastri. They weren't far away, and Russell did the job. So from my side, congratulations to George Russell. Well-deserved victory, if you ask me.
Okay, cool. So I guess we can end the podcast there. And
oh, great.
Can we like agree, like, instead of giving him flowers, can we maybe just rather give him grass or something? Like, can we not just meet in the middle? Yeah, because
Okay, I'll meet you in the middle if we can at least give him a rose. We don't have to give him the whole bouquet. Let's give him a rose.
I said this to my mates. It could have been you actually, but I don't know which group it was. That there's so many F1 groups, but I said that the most upsetting part about Max and Lando coming together, as a McLaren and Red Bull fan, the most upsetting part of them two coming together was the fact that they let George Russell win the race, which I thought was a little bit like unnecessary. Like they at least one of them could have ended up winning. Why let George Russell win the race? But okay, anyways, guys, I'm obviously just making jokes and you know, but you are right that I'm 100% correct. I think one of the things about racing is that if you're not in the best car, put yourself in the best position to pick up the pieces if something comes out. And we applaud drivers that do that, because those are the drivers that end up being the drivers that become champions, the drivers that make a difference in the sport. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what makes you a good driver. It's getting the most out of the car that you can possibly get. And let's be honest, there's a lot of what ifs. There's a lot of sort of like thinking of like Piastri, for example. If he didn't get his penalty or his lap deleted, he probably would have ended up winning the race. He started 8th and finished 4th. Well, 2nd, but 4th. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Even without the crash, he had a phenomenal performance.
Yes.
And had he not had that deleted lap, that race was probably his first race win of Formula One. So there's a lot of what ifs here.
Yes.
But ultimately, at the end of the day, the person who made the difference, the person who put his car in the right place at the right time, was George Russell. Sorry, George Russell. And so yeah, we've got to give him his one rose, because that's all I'm willing to give him. But yeah, at the end of the day, well done to him. Well done to Piastri. I think Piastri did a phenomenal job. I really feel that Piastri is shaping up very quickly. He to be honest, he's not aggressive. He's not a Max Verstappen in the sense that he's aggressive. He's not a Max Verstappen in the sense that he's come into the sport and sort of just made waves or whatever. He's playing it under the radar, but he's doing a damn good job. And I can tell you, there's something about this kid that's going to make a very, very, very good career in his future. And he's setting himself up, because at such a young age, doing what he's doing, I can't see him being in a car that's not one of the better cars. So So I just feel like he will definitely have the opportunities to fight for world championships. And yeah, I just think that he's doing a phenomenal job. You got to also say Sainz did a solid job. And
yeah, he did. He absolutely crushed Leclerc this weekend.
Yeah, okay, but
we're not going to talk about it.
Okay.
Not going to talk about it.
No,
I don't have my shield here in the form of BT.
Yeah, no, but okay. The thing is, I think I know what BT would say, and I'm gonna side with him here. Like, you can't blame Leclerc. I think Leclerc literally
No.
had everything go against him this weekend. Honestly, like literally
Mm-hmm.
everything went against him. Whether it was his team doing something dumb, or whether it was getting caught up between Piastri and uh, uh, uh,
Perez.
Perez, um, everything went against him. And you know what? I love his attitude. He didn't blame Perez. He didn't blame Piastri. He took it as a racing incident. He got caught up in a bad situation, and that's all it was. It happens.
An inch.
Yeah, but he did a good job to try and get back into the race, but then I don't know what the team was doing, because he ended up on Plan Z, which usually is code for we don't know what we're doing. So I don't understand. Like, was it like 5 stops that he made? He was running in the points at a stage when they were like, well, let's put again, and I couldn't really understand, because I don't know if he was struggling with something, but I'm sure he should have been able to make it on the tires that he was on. But I don't know. I'm not going to get into. I wasn't focused too much on it, considering, at that point you kind of like, whatever. There's too much to focus on at the front. But yeah, let's just keep it to the positive things. Sainz had a solid race again. And Piastri and George. Yeah, look, Mercedes are looking promising for in Spain you could say, okay, it's a track suited to them, but in Austria, I guess you can say in the past it's been suited to them, but more recently you would say it's definitely not been their strongest, specifically in this new era.
Yeah.
So the fact that George was there, the fact that they did have pace, I think Mercedes are looking on the up here. I think we can finally say they are looking on the up here. So I'm super excited. I'm super excited for Silverstone, because I think that's a track where, first of all, George and Lewis are both going to be highly motivated. They've got a car. Got a car that looks pretty solid. McLaren has a car that looks extremely solid, with a highly motivated Brit that's going to want some kind of revenge, or to pick up the pieces of winning a race that he just could have won, possibly. Then you have a Max who's, let's be honest, he's Max. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm excited, man. I can't wait for Silverstone, and I am honestly super excited.
No, say yeah, guys. If you guys want to hear more what we have to say about Russell, Sainz, Piastri, and even some of the other drivers that we haven't talked about yet, make sure you are subscribed so that you don't miss the driver ratings episode, because we're going to get more into those drivers. Because I feel we've spoken a little bit too much already for what was a boring race until Lando and Max happened.
100%.
But guys, before we leave you, grab your race review. Well, your race rating.
You fumble this every time, mate.
At least I'm remembering now. There's progress, just like Mercedes. Slow
progress. Look, I'm not gonna lie to you. Usually I'm the one that's giving solid ratings to races, because I'm one of those types of people that generally enjoy the chess games. I generally enjoy what's happening in the midfield. So I usually see the fun in most races. But I gotta say, if it weren't for Max and Lando, this was going to be an extremely bad race. So for that, I can't give it a high rating based on 6 laps worth of battling. So I'm going to stick with a 5. I generally feel, and I'm very disappointed, because I was really, after that sprint race, I was expecting this to be an absolute belter. Specifically between McLaren and Red Bull. But honestly, it looked like Red Bull had it in the bag. Then Max started having a bit of issues. Then they fumbled, on a very rare occasion, they fumbled the pit stop for him, which is what put McLaren in that position in the first place. But if it weren't for that, you could probably say that Red Bull would have just run away with it again. So it was kind of like a last year situation in a sense. And yeah, but it also just goes to show you, one little mistake can really change an entire race. And it happened to be the team that never seems to make mistakes, which is highly ironic. But anyways, maybe Netflix was like, listen guys, we need to script a little bit here. We need to spice things up a little, Anyways, 5 out of 10. I don't want to ramble too much, guys. 5 out of 10. That's what I've got for the race. Dirk, you go for it, pal.
For me, honestly, I think for once I'm gonna rate a race higher than you, and not in the fashion to make you mad. again, just like you, I'm very much into the whole, the strategy behind it. I like the high speed chess effect. And for a big part of that race, I was very thoroughly entertained, but it just went up to a different level when Max and Lando started going. But for me, the race was a solid six out of 10. I enjoyed it, and it's not obviously not going to get like a 2021 level rating, but a 6 out of 10. I enjoyed it, and but I am beyond excited for Silverstone.
Yeah.
The three Brits in the form of Lando, George, and Lewis, like you said, Max being Max. Ferrari are really always strong around Silverstone. I don't know what it is about that track and Ferrari. They just seem to hook it up there every single time. And you can't forget about Piastri. We just gave the guy his flowers, and we're going to give him more in the driver ratings.
100%.
Guys, don't forget to like. Don't forget to subscribe and ding that bell to don't miss a future future podcast or short here on Break at the Apex. And we'll see you guys in the driver ratings. And then let's get ready for Silverstone. Cheers!
Cheers, guys.